The wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Though the world looked markedly different in the years before the breaking, the devastation wrought by male Aes Sedai reshaped continents and oceans, with humans around the world forced to rebuild from the ashes of their fallen civilization. Separating the Westlands from the rest of the eastern continent, the spine of the world was a vast mountain range, stretching from the Great Blight in the north to the Sea of Storms in the south. With the rivers Aranin, Irilel, and Galen flowing from the spine, these mountains were largely impassable, save for a few areas like Tarwin's Gap along the Mountains of Doom, the Nyam Pass near Shinar, the Jengai Pass next to Kyrian, the path leading to Steading Shangtai, and the southern coastal strip along the Bay of Ramara, which led through the Drowned Lands. Though few humans lived in these mountains, they were home to several Ogier steadings. Just east of the spine lay the barren lands of the Aiel Waste, also called the Threefold Land by the local Aiel population, a harsh, strong, resilient, spear-wielding people who wore veils when they fought, and considered this realm a testing ground and punishment meant to harden them physically, mentally, and emotionally. Due to the extreme heat and scarcity of rivers, the honor-obsessed Aiel clans valued water above almost anything, with water oaths considered unbreakable vows. In the south of the waste, there was the Turmoil Desert, a land so hot, dry, and lifeless, not even the Aiel dared visit the region. These wastelands had only one city called Ruidion, which the ancient Gen Aiel and their Aes Sedai allies attempted to establish. Yet they eventually died out before completing their work, leaving the city unfinished and abandoned. Although most were forbidden from entering Ruidion, the Aes Sedai felt it necessary to keep the memories of this place alive, and so contacted the other Aiel clans through the dreams of those able to channel the One Power, starting a tradition where chiefs and wise ones visited the city to learn about their history. Though female channelers were greatly respected, those males able to use the One Power were sent north to the Great Blight so they might die fighting the Dark One. Similar to the Dragon Reborn prophecy of the West, the Aiel believed there would one day rise a chief of chiefs who would both destroy and save them, saying, "He shall spill out the blood of those who call themselves Aiel as water on sand, and he shall break them as dried twigs, yet the remnant of a remnant shall he save, and they shall live." Further east, beyond the vast cliffs of the Dawn Mountain Range and Great Rift Canyon, were the lands of Shara, a single, secretive, and secluded nation, originally founded after the breaking of the world, ruled by a single, absolute monarch, either a female Shaboan or male Shabote. A harsh, rigid slave-trading people, their rulers held power for only 7 years, at which point they died and were replaced by their spouse, who then took the throne, remarried, and reigned for their own 7-year term, a cycle referred to as the Will of the Pattern. Despite being accomplished, powerful warriors that defeated both the Trolloc invasion and the attempted conquest of Arthur Hawkwing, who sent up to 2,000 ships and 300,000 soldiers, the people of Shara were mysteriously averse to discussing their victories, refusing to even acknowledge these wars ever occurred. Refraining from almost all contact with the outside world, very few merchants and gleemen were allowed to visit their lands, and even then were only permitted to enter the trade hubs of the east and port cities of the south, with foreigners killed if they ventured away from these regions. Although they had their own magic users, called Ayad, who lived in secluded villages they could not leave without permission, only females had any rights or power, while the males were used as breeding stock to be inevitably killed by around the age of 21, or when their abilities started to develop. While it appeared from the outside that Ayad were little more than slaves, there were some who speculated these female channelers were in fact the true power behind the throne, and it was they who killed the ruler every 7 years. Both the Ayad and slaves were tattooed to show their societal position, with greater marks equaling lesser status, and since these indicators were permanent, it meant once a person was brought low, they could never rise again. Stretching across the far north of the entire continent, the Black Mountains of Doom separated the southern realms from the barren redlands of the Great Blight, where the Forsaken, Trollocs, Murdral, Drakkar, and other shadow spawn loyal to the evil entity known as the Dark One lived and organized their attacks against the realms of men. In addition to the Dead Sea in the west, a small corrupted town and huge Forsaken fortress, the most notable location of the Blight was Sheol Ghul, a black mountain which once existed as a tropical paradise, before becoming the focal point of the Dark One's power and location of his imprisonment by the dragon loosed there in Telamon. Moving beyond the continent bordered by the Arath Ocean to the west, the Sea of Storms in the south, and Morinel Ocean in the east, there was the Land of the Madmen in the far south, a chaotic, troubled continent of primitive, hovel-dwelling people, where both male and female channelers of the One Power ran rampant without restraint or care for those negatively impacted by their behavior. Though the insanity of the males caused the greatest problems, with their explosive, uncontrolled bursts of magic creating significant seismic activity, the females were also considered dangerous and unpredictable, as they were never able to unify or organize themselves to the extent necessary to control their male counterparts. Though this continent was discovered and visited by the Sea Folk, they were unwelcomed by the distrustful population who immediately attempted to kill outsiders. Therefore, the Sea Folk forbid travel to these lands. Finally, there were the western lands of Shan, where Arthur Hawkwing sent a great host of ships and men to conquer the continent, establishing an empire under his son, Luthair Paindrag Mondwyn. Though these forces never returned to the Westlands and thus were presumed lost, Luthair in fact succeeded in his mission by exploiting local rivalries, turning the native nations against each other. Before the arrival of the Eastern Invasion Force, the existing realms of the continent were led largely by treacherous Aes Sedai, existing in a near-constant state of war, with lies, rebellions, coups, and betrayals commonplace, creating a culture that considered honesty and loyalty utter foolishness. Using this volatile situation to their advantage, the invaders began a gradual, 3-centuries-long conquest, with another 2 centuries spent securing their victories, a period referred to as the Consolidation, ultimately ending with Luthair's descendants uniting the entire continent under the rule of an absolute emperor or empress reigning from the Crystal Throne. Rather than establishing some form of hereditary succession, these rulers chose the heir they felt best suited for the position, leading their family members to viciously compete for the opportunity. At some point, Luthair Paindrag heard that his father in the Westlands died, and receiving no further messages, assumed his empire was no more. He therefore resolved that his people would one day return to their homeland and re-establish what was lost. United under a single authority, the Empire of Shan grew so powerful, they eliminated all Trollocs and other shadow spawn of the Lesser Blight in the far north, with the exception of some few Drakkar and other creatures, which continue to roam the region. A superstitious people with a strict social and political hierarchy, the Blood, consisting of those descended from the Eastern Conquerors, or later natives raised in status, were at the highest level, though they were then further divided into High Blood and Low Blood. These elite were followed by the Free Peoples, slaves, and Domain, though some slaves who directly served the Blood were considered of higher status than freedmen. Inheriting a deep mistrust for channelers and Aes Sedai, men with these talents were immediately killed, while women with a natural ability to wield the One Power were made Domain, considered the lowest social class, comparable to animals, who were leashed with a special ter'angreal collar, preventing them from doing anything other than what their masters desired. These collars were held by Suldam, greatly honored and respected women who lacked the natural affinity for the One Power, but could be trained in its use. Fielding a massive, ever-victorious army which claimed to be undefeated, the elite warriors among them became Death Watch guards, charged with the protection of the royal family, while the Seekers of Truth acted as a secret police force. Though Ogier also lived in Shan, they were unlike their thoughtful, peace-loving kin across the sea, acting grim and warlike, sometimes serving alongside humans in the Death Watch Guard. The continent itself was divided into a northern landmass, home to the cities of Sohima, Impharo, Asin Bayar, and Kiart, in addition to a southern territory where the capital of Shandar was located, as well as Kirindad, Anangor, Shan Kefar, Rampur, Tazura, Norin Mashar, and the islands of Salaking, Maram Kashor, and Marendalar, where a major failed rebellion rose against the Crystal Throne. Though the many peoples and cultures around the world established great, diverse, and prominent realms, nothing could endure forever. Therefore, these lands continued to transform over the ages, as there are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the wheel of time. Love the Wheel of Time or any other series? Then why not check out Audible, where they have the largest collection of audiobooks available. Sign up through the links below for regular membership and get a 30-day free trial, or else try Premium Plus for a 60-day trial and up to 3 free audiobooks. For those who prefer to read their stories, there is the Kindle Unlimited plan, where you get as many ebooks as you wish. If you haven't already, be sure to check out the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, narrated by Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, along with the prequel novel and history book. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Barachado, Delacruz the Freed, Average Soul the Healer, and Kyle Blitzsword. If you'd like to help the channel, be sure to give a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and check out the links below, or else go to patreon.com/CivilizationEx, where you can gain early access to videos, vote on future content, and watch the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.